Okay, so we made our pieces. I looked around in my junk what we would have to make this sort of raised edge. I found this rubber gasket thing, which I'm gonna try to stick on there. If, you know, it just happens to be sort of the right shape. If not, one alternative would be, I got a big leather string. You can stick leather on something, sand it around. Leather sands very well actually. And painted metal. And leather is a very good material because it's very flexible. In this case, this has sort of a nice round shape to it. A lot of other stuff would do. You could make strips of cardboard. If you have a cardboard that's thick enough but still bendable, it would work. It would look good. Next thing is I'll make coffee before I stick this on, and I will talk a little bit about armor and approaches to armor. So, this fancy stuff is always put on a Roman medieval theme with these armors, and I did a lot of medieval reenactment, so I was quite a bit involved with armors. A lot of great things about medieval times. One thing not so great, we in Europe did not have coffee. Maybe if you went on the crusades to the Holy Land, maybe the Arabs gave you a cup, but we didn't have it. That's big lack. A lot of other things were real great. So we get back to the armor. We theme our armor on different periods and give it a certain style. This is, as the Assassin's Creed, where it comes from, is themed on a Roman style, not specifically on Roman armor as such. As far as I know, I'm not an absolute specialist on Roman armor, but as far as I know, the Romans did not use this for their soldiers, for their legionnaires. But the same sort of thing was seen with gladiators. There was a gladiator armor which covered one arm down to the from the shoulder to the hand, which is pretty much this style. But we're in fantasy, so we're free. Nevertheless, if you make your armor, spend some thought before for the looks of it, for the practicality of it. And I have a medieval book which I really love. It's my Bible in terms of medieval stuff. Take a look at it, take a close look at it, read a little bit about it, because it will tell you what piece was good for what and why they stopped making it also. That tells you what you really don't want to have. You're not going to fight probably, so it's not necessary that this thing protects you, seriously. But if you have something that will be functional, you will feel better in it, you will act better in it, and the more comfortable you are, the more fun you're going to have. Also look at action movies. Medieval action, fantasy action movies, and look at the main characters if they're very active. If they're very active in the film, chances are their armor is well made to be active, to be movable. With background characters, they might be really stiff because they don't have to move. Nobody cares about what they do, just about what they look like. So, back to work. We got our pieces. We want to make a little bit of thicknesses on there. I found this rubber gasket and I tried out glue to make sure it holds. So I found some glue which works for this. Ken tells me this glue is equivalent to Gorilla Glue in the United States, but it was important to make a little test on the rest piece. Just so you got something which will stick, whatever you stick on there. Your materials might not be the same as mine. So, in this case, what we do, this glue that I have works best when you put some on and then let it dry a bit. And I will prepare some on here too. This might make a little bit of a detail mess, which I'm not too worried about because I want to give it some texture afterwards, because I like that cast bronze effect. I will take a cutter knife or something of the sort. Might come in handy. If you want to build things, you might want to have a little stock of miscellaneous things, and you don't need to go out and buy leather. When I start doing leather stuff, I just asked my friends around to give me whatever they were throwing away. So people are throwing away belts all the time because they're scratched up. Horse people, if you know somebody with horses, there's always some stuff which is not good anymore for a horse, which is great leather. For doing little things like this, you might not have to go out and buy anything. So, let's see. This one seems to be good enough. So, I start sticking it on. Try to do it nicely around the edges. I overlapped this a bit and cut it with a cutter knife. Okay, so we made a bit of a border around here, and I used some old gasket which I had, and there's a problem. The problem is I've ran out of the same gasket. Now, I just told Ken, rock and roll is not a music, it's an attitude. Meaning you get into situations, you work yourself out of it. So, these two will have something different, and I have a piece of leather here. Again, if you don't have a big leather string, a lot of other stuff will do. Maybe a bit of thick cardboard or something else. And if you want to make a leather string and you have an old belt, you put a ruler on and take a cutter knife and you can make a leather string like that. It's quite easy. Okay, now it's playtime. We've done the hard work. So we want to decorate this. They did this with this pattern. We can make something similar, but I also wanted to show you that you can use a lot of things. So I just assembled really quickly a couple of things I have on it. What we do is we want to create some shapes on it. That's really what we're doing. I will put the star just on the hole to hide the little rivet I'm going to put in later on. So, since we're in Luxembourg, put him on there too. We want something symmetrical, so I'm gonna go for... I'm making this up as I go along, right? I think you sort of noticed that. Do we have anything in the stickers? That's cool. Actually, fairly awful, but I want to show what you can do with stickers as well, so I'm going to use some of it. Very with subtlety, I'm going to put VGS in there. If you want to make up an interesting VGS logo, you can. You can send it on Instagram on Mancave Effects. So this is still missing something, but I don't know what yet. I got a cheap toy here. In this case, the only one I had was a goat, and actually a pretty badly made goat. But we could use it. Might actually even use it. Of course, if you want to look mean, you probably want a wolf or a tiger or something. We will chop off its head sort of along a line where we can glue it, but we still recognize that it's a goat. I don't know if this saws the plastic very well or not. Okay, we put the goat on there as sort of a mean symbol. And again, I'm doing this on purpose in a sort of careless way. In this case, to show you that you can use very, very, very easy techniques. Of course, if you want to exactly replicate this, you can do it with exactly the same methods. But you now this is a bit on the funny side, but it's okay. Do I have anything else which I want to show off? Yeah, here are some other stickers, which I don't take for color, just for shape. Okay, so I got some car filler here. It's not absolutely necessary, but I'm going to use some car filler to show, and then I'm going to use some acrylic. If you're not familiar with car filler, it's stinky stuff. So if you do a lot of it, wear breathing protection. In this case, I'm not going to use it like I would make a beautiful car metal polished surface, but I'm going to use it really like Play-Doh. Stuff is dry. I'm just going really quick, simple sand over it to take away sharp things which don't look so good. Some of these faults I want to keep in there because that's one of the characteristics of primitive cast things, is that they have bumps and little dimples and stuff. I'm gonna also mastic it up a little bit with acrylic. The difference is acrylic takes a little bit more time to dry, but it's very nice because you can use it with a lot of feeling very easily. Just put a bunch on here. And use my finger. You could actually do this without a glove, you just have to wash your fingers afterwards. I take a little bit of water on my finger, and these things, like especially like that cardboard stuff, you can rub these in. Rub the acrylic a bit around the edges. You can fill in these things around the goat. We want to have all these cardboard and plastic and rubber pieces become one piece of armor of cast bronze. Pretty good. So, this is the primer. Just a minute, turn upside down to the back side because of all the edges. Okay, the primer pretty dry. I'm gonna put spray paint, but I'm first gonna try it on the back side, so if something looks off, I'm gonna see it before I mess up with something on the front. Okay, I'm just going to give a little bit of a distant cloud of silver on. Gives an effect that some things have been worn or rubbed a bit too much. When it's dry, I'm going to also do the same thing a little bit with a black or brown spray to give to bring out the designs and the knobs and stuff in them. Okay, there's 120 different ways of putting patina on something. Patina just means that you want to make it old, lived in, dirty, a number of things. It can mean a whole lot of things, and you can do it in endless different ways. Here I'm showing quick stuff. So I'm going to use a spray can with black at a distance and just put a cloud over it from the side, and which brings out the sort of like shadows. And if we go over this from the side, we see that suddenly these things, like this coat of arms, suddenly came out much stronger. I'm gonna do the same thing on the star. Okay, so we got our little graphite trick, which we described in another video, which you can click somewhere here. And what we do is we put a little bit of graphite on before the paint is completely dry. We don't want to put too much on. Well, enough so your finger slides. This gives a very nice metallic effect. Graphite, you buy it in lubricant section in your store. And now we took away a bit of that brassy shine, but when we wash it off with water, just simply, we will get some of that back. So I got this on my finger. I will rub over the things that I want to bring out. Yeah, I think in this case it's no problem putting on your fingers. You can just wash it with water, a little bit of normal soaps, nothing special. And we don't want to push on it. We just want to rub over it and give a bit of metal shine to stuff that sticks out. As I said, this is probably a little bit more, it becomes a bit too blackish, but it brings out everything that stands out, like these things now shine up differently. We can put our little goat here, and you put it on before the paint is completely dry, like when it's still a little bit sticky to the touch. The metal effect is very realistic. Okay, graphite, if it's not stuck to something with glue or wet paint, washes off quite easily. So if I wash this off with just a wet paper, it's gonna come off where it's not stuck to the paint, and the rest is going to stay on there. So again, we get certain parts used and rubbed, and the other parts, the gold will come out again. And it makes it a bit used and oxidized and cleaned again sort of effect. Yeah, so we got our things, and now next I want to see what they will look like. So I will now put them together. I have a collection of leather belts. I have a collection just because I told friends that I can use all kinds of leather belts. So they give me anything that they put away from dog collars, horse gear that they don't need anymore, just normal belts. I got so much that I got to throw away some. So you don't need to go out and buy belts, and you will have a much better collection of belts. So the next thing is we're going to see how we're going to use these. Here's two horse belts. They're a bit on the heavy side. On the other hand, heavy might look good on this stuff. this look tough? Actually looks like it's a weapon. If I look at my inspirational drawing there, they used leather string on there, which I do not recommend. If you do leather string stuff for this, which should be sitting without moving about, you will have to pull it tight, and it's like pulling a string around your arm real tight. It hurts, especially if you want to keep it more than 5 minutes. Now, we're going to do a little bit more patinas on this. I'm taking some acrylic paint here. Let's say brown and black, the most common ones. In fact, if you look at real dirt, it's every color under the sun. So we mix up essentially some dirty paint water. This here, if you got very liquid stuff, it will run into the depths. So if I put this now over my coat of arms here, it will run into the deep parts. I just take a little bit off, and it will make this crown, for instance, or the lion come out much, much more. We can make also sort of like shadows. It wouldn't be shadows, it would be that if there's an actual metal thing and you possess this and you clean it, chances are it's not going to be easy to clean the corners. So the corners will always, and the deep parts will always darken up a little bit. So we put the paint a bit in the corners, rub it off again, like we were cleaning it, but we leave stuff in the corners. And you already see a difference between this one and the other ones. It's too light, so I'm going to put a little bit more black brown stuff in there. And I want these things to come out a little more. Yeah, that one too. Now, the absolute opposite technique is bringing out the details which are outside. For my part, I prefer doing that with thinner based paint, while I like more water-based paint for deep parts, but it's really thinner-based paint is what I grew up with, so it's what I got most feeling for. Okay, so finally I found some silver paint that actually works. That's cool. So I got some of that in my brush. Now next thing is I wipe it off. I just wipe it off until it's almost dry. You can bring out the details by brushing over stuff that's a little bit bigger up, so that the edges of this start turning out silvery. And we want to do that on the parts which we look like nice. For instance, this looks really nice, so we do it a little bit on here. And there's this part which doesn't look so nice, so we don't do it on that, we do it on the part next to it. And do some camouflage. So we got this thing very well aged. Give it a little. Now we can give it a few touches. There's a string on there, which probably is a extra thing to wear it, which I would not recommend. But we have a leather string here, so I put a little bit around here. This is more as interesting little touches. You can come up with your own. I put a little bit of leather grease on there, and then I actually rub my dirty fingers over it so it also looks worn. Let's cut this. I got a little bit of leather grease here, a little left over. I will put some on here, on that belt. Makes it look more in use. I'm used to medieval reenactment, so we use grease, leather grease. You can take, if you don't have anything else, you can take bacon actually. It might sting over time a little bit, but don't use too much. Anything that's greasy will probably do the trick. If you really maintain leather, like if you have a horse or you have a real armor that you want to keep for a long time, you know, use good quality stuff. So here we got a piece of armor which is actually quite protective. I mean, we got a piece PVC pipe, some paint, some glue, some car filler, nothing much special, nothing from NASA or rocket science. In next weeks we might build a little bit more pieces of funny armor, and if you like this, you'd better subscribe and ring the bell, okay?